Hello and welcome to Microbiology 303. This is the first video for the lectures, and we'll be talking about Module 1 in an introduction. And I always say this to my classes when I first begin. I don't know if you need to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You belong at the University of Wisconsin. You belong in this course. You're going to be successful as long as you put in the time necessary to understand the material. You will succeed, and I am here to help you in any way you need. Here's an outline of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to cover some course information real quick. Then we're going to define microbiology in the end of this video, and then we're going to talk about why studying microorganisms is worthwhile. In a second video, we will then talk about the history of microbiology, and that will be the end of Module 1, and then we'll go on to Module 2. First, please take the microbiology concept inventory. This takes about 15 minutes and will then give me some information and some ground floor on where you are in microbiology. I will then give you this survey at the end of the course, and hopefully you'll learn things, and it will tell me where you were successful and you actually did learn things, and where I may need to maybe change how I'm teaching this stuff to help you understand. Please do not use Google or AI to answer questions when you're doing this. I want to know what you know. You will receive 5 bonus points just for taking it and taking it seriously, but I don't want your score doesn't matter that much. And there's going to be lots of questions you don't know because you haven't had a microbiology yet. I am your instructor, Professor Timothy Postjan. I earned my PhD in bacteriology in 1989. I have taught here at UW-Madison since 1991. My research interest is in education research, basically you and how you learn material, where my main work has been in creating tools to analyze how well students learn various subjects. Right now I'm helping to create a concept inventory for immunology, and I also help create the microbiology concept inventory, and I'm in the process of helping to create a second version of it. You can learn much more about the course by reading the syllabus, which is linked in the course orientation module. Please read through the course orientation module and do the exercises I have in there. It saves you asking a lot of silly questions that you don't need to ask that are answered in that material. To make sure you look at this information, I have included a syllabus quiz. Make sure you do it as soon as you have finished the syllabus. The course is broken up into 12 modules that cover various areas of microbiology. In each of these modules, you will have things to absorb and things to do. The absorb pages will list readings, videos, and lectures. Even though it is listed as absorb, I advise you to do this actively. So as you're watching these very lectures, you should be taking notes with a pencil and a piece of paper. This helps you pay attention. It also helps you to absorb the information. The do pages will list assignments that need to be completed, almost always 4 points. You will be assessed in this class in several ways. As we go through the material, there will be online worksheets and other assignments I will ask you to fill out. I hope to also add discussions where we as a class will chat about important topics in microbiology. These will be spec graded. So what does that mean? That means I will look for certain qualities in the assignment, and those will be listed in the rubric. For example, in the discussion posts that you posted a substantive discussion, not just said me too, and then also you posted substantial replies to other students. If you don't do it, you don't get the points, right? If you kind of phone it in and don't work really hard on it, I probably won't give you the points either. But I can go through and grade this very quickly, and I'm just looking for substantive responses. To get you ready for the exams, each module will finish with a quiz of 5 questions each. This will give you a chance to practice recalling the information in a low-stakes test-like environment. Finally, there will be 4 exams, each about 40 to 50 questions. You only get one chance at these, and these will be timed and honor locked. So that's a difference from previous semesters, and unfortunately, in the age of AI, students have begun to cheat with it, and so we have to put that in. I will have a short little quiz very soon that's available right now that you should take that just shows that demonstrates that your honor lock system is working. If it's not working for this class, you're just going to have to drop it because I have to use something to guarantee that students are actually doing the work. Each exam is about 60 minutes long, and all assignments will be closed book. At least all the exams will be closed book. Okay, when I design the course, I use backwards design, which is the probably best method of designing any kind of instructional material. And what that means is I create learning outcomes. Now, students have asked me for these learning outcomes, and that tells you what I'm focused on and what I want you to be able to do for the class. But it is a design document. Now, I do release these because students in the past have wanted this information. I don't really think it's that useful, but it helps me design for the class. And what you should really focus on is the study guides that I release for each exam. Those will really help you understand what I emphasize for the class. Okay, let's begin. And right away, I begin with a question. Now, when I ask these questions, I actually generally want you to think about them, and I want you to answer with what you think the right answer is. These are not going to be graded for points, but it's useful for help you to participate in the class. So I'll ask the question, I'll pause a little bit, you may want to stop the video, and then I will tell you what the answer is. Don't just listen to it and then go on. Again, participate in these and work through them actively. So, first question, which of these is a good definition of the term microorganism? And you can see the 5 choices there. I will pause now and let you think about it. All right, so this will surprise you. I think the right answer is either D or E. How can it be either one of those? Well, let's talk about it. In the past, people thought of microorganisms as anything that's very small, a single cell, and not visible to the naked eye. That was microbiology. Microbes are mostly not visible to the naked eye, but we now know there are exceptions such as Thiomargarita nambiensis that lives off the coast of Namibia. This microbe eats hydrogen sulfide and uses it to reduce nitrate or oxygen. These 2 substances are in different levels in the water column in the ocean, and so it has to go down deep and get the hydrogen sulfide in one area, then it has to move to another area to get nitrate or oxygen. So it tends to have a huge vacuole in the center of it, and this microorganism is actually 1 millimeter in diameter. So it's actually visible to the naked eye. So we need a new definition. We will consider microbiology to be the study of microorganisms that can exist as single cells, contain a nucleic acid genome for at least some part of their life cycle, and are capable of replicating that genome. Okay, next questions. We have 2 discussion posts, and I want you to go into the discussion, and this will be listed on Canvas, and answer these 2 questions. From your own personal life, name 1 harmful thing bacteria can do, and from your own personal life, name 1 helpful thing bacteria can do. If you are aware of any way you use microorganisms or microorganisms have benefited or harmed you, please post that. If you don't want to share personal information, that's cool. You can just talk about it generally. But please do that and pay attention to the due date on this information on Canvas. Okay, next question. So, what percentage of life on this planet do you think is microbial? If you look at cell numbers, do you think it's 50%, 90%, 99%, 99.999%, or 99.99999999%? Please answer now. Get this. The correct answer is E. Rough estimates figure there are 2 times 10 to the 19th animals versus 1 times 10 to the 30th bacteria on this planet. That works out to be E. 99.9999999% of the world's life is microbial. But wait a minute, Professor Postjan. Macroorganisms are much bigger. I mean, it's really not fair to do it by cell number because we're made of literally trillions of cells. So, maybe a better answer is who owns the planet by biomass? If you weighed all the organisms on Earth, how much would be microbial? So I'll give you a chance to answer this one. The correct answer is C, 17%. So any way you slice it, microorganisms make up a significant percentage of life on this planet. So where did I get that 17% number? Here you go. I will sometimes reference the literature when I have a point I want to make, and I will always provide the link, and you can see that here at the bottom of the lecture slide. You don't need to go to those links and read them, but it's available if you want. So here you go. Actually, the massive amount of material on the planet is plants. So plants really make up a huge group. But as you can see, if you add up all the microbial biomass, it actually adds up to about 17%. So that's significant too. So let's talk about the players in that microbial biomass. There are the bacteria. Bacteria are single cells. They divide by asexual reproduction. They have a simple morphology, a diverse metabolism, and there are some pathogens. That is the bacteria. The second group are the archaea. They are single cells. They have asexual reproduction, a simple morphology, a diverse metabolism. So similar to the bacteria, but they are phylogenetically, meaning, evolutionarily, they are completely different organisms. And so they are grouped differently, the bacteria, and there are no pathogens. Finally, there are eukaryotes, probably what you spent most of your time studying in your biology class. Most eukaryotes are single cell, most of the species that we know. There are also macroorganisms, and that's what you spent a lot of time looking at. They have a complex morphology. It's amazing all the different morphologies that are in the eukaryotes, but they have a super simple metabolism compared to the bacteria and archaea. And there are some pathogens. And finally, there are viruses. These are microbes, but not microorganisms. What's the distinction there? Microorganisms are things that I think are living things. Microbes can also include non-living things that can replicate, that are small, and that is the viruses. To end this first lecture, I will finish up by giving you a sales pitch about why microorganisms are worth studying. First, they are the most abundant organisms on the planet, and they affect our lives of microbes in many ways. Second, microbes have a huge impact. They do metabolic processes that are not seen in other living things. So if it wasn't for them, wood wouldn't degrade. There's a lot of different carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, water, etc., and metals that would not go through their biogeochemical cycles. They affect the weather through cloud formation. They affect soil and water quality. So microorganisms have a huge biological impact. Why study microorganisms? Because of basic research. There is a common evolutionary origin of all microorganisms. Thus, what we learn about these microbes will probably apply to all living things, depending upon, of course, on what you're studying. The benefit is microbes are easy to study because they are easier to manipulate than plants. They grow way faster, and They're great models for various processes. They're also grow way faster than animals too, of course. As two examples, E. coli is a model organism for many basic life processes, and cyanobacteria carry out a plant-like photosynthesis and serve as a great model for photosynthesis. Why study microorganisms? Part 3. When people think of the harmful effects of microbes, they immediately think of infectious disease, and their medical importance is greatly important. Infectious disease in a normal year accounts for about 25% of mortality. Because of COVID-19 epidemic, that went up a little bit and has now gone back down. And what you might not know is that microbes are also beneficial to human health. The microbes that grow on us are called our normal microbiota, and they provide useful functions to their human hosts, and we will cover that. Why study microbes? Part 4. Their agricultural importance. Soil health depends on microbes to degrade compounds deposited in them and provide it for future use. Plants depend on microbes for nutrients and defense. Microbial diseases of plants also impact agricultural productivity. One example is a disease that is spread by the Asian citrus psyllid, and it's caused by Candidatus liberbacter. This psyllid is a sap-sucking insect that serves as a vector and delivers the bacterium to the plant. It then causes citrus greening, as shown in the photo on the right. That reached Florida in 2005 and has quickly spread to most orange groves in the state, and they're still dealing with it. A second example is bird flu in bird flocks and cattle, so chickens, turkeys, etc., and cattle. There's been a concern about the spread of H5N1, which is an avian influenza strain in agricultural herds. This influenza has been attacking wild birds for a while. Since 2024, there have been 71 herds infected, and there have been cases that have spread to humans, except they've all been mild. They've been, weirdly, eye infections, and there's been no human-to-human spread. Fun. Why study microbes? Part 5. Their applications in food. Microbes are useful in food production, including chocolate, bread, cheese, fermented vegetables, such as kimchi, and beer. This is ancient. It's been done for many, many years, and there's whole books written about it. Why study microbes? Part 6. Bioremediation and biodegradation of plastics and toxins. Shown on the right there is the cleanup of contaminated site, a railway site, and microorganisms can help in this. Genetic engineering. We have used microorganisms to move DNA around and do all sorts of interesting things. Bioenergy and biofuels. We have used microorganisms to help in the green economy. Industrial production of chemicals, enzymes, pharmaceuticals, and food additives. This is shown on the right in a little fermenter there where enzymes are being produced. And then mining and petroleum recovery, microorganisms can be helpful in that. Finally, for this video, I want you to think about this. Given what we have just talked about, sort the importance of the impact of microbes. What do you think was the most important, and what do you think is the least important? Hopefully, you now see the importance of microbiology in their life and the lives of everyone. And for the rest of the semester, we're going to be talking about microorganisms. All right, see you in the next video.